You're listening to the Doc Hardy Show. I'm Doc Hardy. This is WPKN 89.5 FM. We are broadcasting from downtown Bridgeport, Connecticut, and reaching Fairfield, Litchfield, and New Haven counties in Connecticut, Suffolk County and New York's Long Island, and streaming around the world at WPKN.org. That last song was called Song with Orange and Other Things Part 2. The artist is Mark Wade. It's off of his new release, or recent release, I should say, True Stories. And he's on the line right now, and we're broadcasting live on YouTube as well. So welcome to the YouTube live audience. Mark, how are you today?
I'm doing good. How you doing today or this morning?
I'm doing good. I'm doing very good.
All right.
It's good to see you. This is our third time, and each time it's a technological progression, right? Because the first time it was a phone. We just talked on the phone, and I recorded the interview.
Mhm.
And the last time during COVID, we advanced to Zoom, where again I recorded the Zoom and played it later. I played the audio only. I didn't play the video. And now here we are. We got audio and video. We're broadcasting on the radio. We're broadcasting on YouTube. We both have learned new things, haven't we?
Oh boy, yeah. There's been a lot of things have happened since then. Yes, sir.
All right. So for those of you that are not familiar with Mark's background, you taught yourself on the electric bass. Is that correct? And
Yeah, that's right. I was an electric bass player to start, totally self-taught. Yeah.
then how did you get to be, according to Downbeat magazine, last 5 or 6 years, one of the best bassists, around? How did you progress to that point from electric
Well,
bass?
it took a little time. The short answer is it did take some time, but it when I started playing, like everybody else, you're playing for fun, right? You're playing because you hear music and you get excited by it. And I was just always curious about what was around the next corner. I'd learn something and then I'd want to know where'd that come from and who influenced them. And, so I was always just going through this progress of digging through, what was going to be coming next. And so I didn't start playing jazz. I started playing popular music, rock and roll, that kind of thing. But if you trace anything far enough, where do you end up? You end up coming back to the blues and to jazz music. And, after a long progression of getting there, finding that music, then being curious about that, just kind of rinse and repeat with that process. I find myself where I am today.
So was Moving Day your first release?
First one was 2015 was Event Horizon.
Okay.
And I'm not, and I can't remember if we had spoken about that one or not, but Event Horizon was the very first one with this very same band that you hear on this current record. Tim Harrison on piano, Scott Newman on drums. We've been at it. I think our first gig was something like 2013 or something. So we're coming up on our 10-year anniversary. We had that one, and then Moving Day, 2018, which did well, and then I put out a solo record during the pandemic of an all bass video that I made here at home, aptly titled "Songs from Isolation," and then but this is the third trio release that we have here for True Stories. So
Yeah, check out that's still on YouTube, right? Songs of Isolation.
it is, yeah, 5 videos.
Yeah, those of you listening, you want to go to YouTube and check out "Songs of Isolation" by Mark Wade. That's what we talked about last year during
Yes, I think so.
COVID.
Yeah.
You learned some new skills, editing skills with video editing, and you did the whole thing yourself. You played electric bass, and you played your double bass, and you did some percussive stuff too, as I recall. Right?
It was all hands on deck here with no piano or drums around to play with it around those times. So everything was made here at home. You have to if you're going to make 5 different videos and you're kind of stuck at home, you have to get real creative at a certain point as to what you're going to film and what your backdrop is. But as we all experience, I had some time on my hands. So
Right, let's talk about the new release or recent release, True Stories, which is I love it because it's a collection of stories. There's actually sometimes when you're doing these interviews, you don't really know if there's a story behind every song that the artist does, and I hate asking put people on the spot, but you literally have a story for every song. So talk to us about the kind of the concept and the procedure, the process of that coming together.
So for this album, rather than just writing music in the abstract or just coming up with an idea, write, pretty melody, pretty chords, and there's nothing wrong with that. And certainly, I have and will write music like that. I kind of took on the task of of writing a collection of tunes, an album's worth of tunes, where I'm basing my original music on a piece of music that really inspired me. So, like maybe the music of Wayne Shorter or Miles Davis or Charles Mingus or Igor Stravinsky. I'm taking a concept from that music, sometimes a little piece of a phrase, an actual, borrowing actually a little phrase or a little idea, but always with the idea of writing something new around it, using that as just like a jumping off point for writing a brand new tune. But I'm always referencing back to to that artist. It's always somebody who inspired me somewhere along the way. And I thought, since really, if you think about it, everybody's music, no matter how new or exciting or original it is, we're all standing on the shoulders of somebody else to get us to that point, right? We listened to somebody who turned us on to this idea or that idea. And, in this case, I maybe just took that a little bit of a step further.
So the song I played, "Song with Orange" and Other Things, Part Two, and of course there's obviously a Part One that precedes that. Although it doesn't always have to be, but in this case there is. Talk to us about that track. That's a Ming. Is that a Mingus?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, Mingus, dead on. A lot of people will peg you as if you're a bass player. Well, you must like Mingus, right? Because he was a bass player, and of course, I love his playing as a bass player. But the thing that always has inspired me from just the first drop of the needle was Mingus's inspiring work as a leader, as a writer, and really as a visionary in this music. I mean, when you think about the music of Mingus, it is a very unique combination of both avant-garde for when it was written, but also very grounded in the blues and tradition in a way that is just pure Mingus is really is a unique expression, I think, of jazz. And so I've always just been super impressed by his uses of forms and structures and how he used the band and all these different colors. So the Mingus tune here in question is called "Song with Orange," not Part One or Part Two, and not with other things, as I have it titled on my record. And in his original tune, it's a very interesting kind of arrangement. What we heard to start off the show was the second or the back half of that tune, which is probably the more famous part of the tune. People know that melody and whatnot with the band. But preceding that on the original track are like a few different kind of sections of music that one might say is unrelated if you heard them individually, but when you listen them all together, such a creative sound. So I took it upon myself to say, okay, I'm going to take the famous part of the tune, but I'm going to take all those other sections that he just wrote, I'm going to chop those off, and I'm going to write my own thing that is meant to sound like he could have written it, right, in the style of Mingus. So it's my music, but I'm trying as an exercise, as a musical exercise that you could say, trying to marry the two. So that's that was the concept behind that tune, to be as Mingus-like as possible.
You did a great job with it. The song I'm going to play after we're done talking, one of my favorites is "I Feel More Like I Do Now," and that's a Miles Davis inspiration.
Yeah. So this one, again, some of these are more directly based on tunes, and some are a little bit looser. This one is kind of a nod to Miles's version. It's a little looser nod to Miles's version of "Freedom Jazz Dance" off his album Miles Smiles. Miles Smiles was the very first jazz record I got, which for anybody familiar with the record would say that's pretty advanced concept to kind of dive into uh, as an introduction to the genre.
Did you purchase it or was it a gift?
It was a gift. I think I had someone say, "Oh, you should listen to this." So, okay. And while it took many years to really kind of get down with what was happening, in some of that stuff, I mean, this stuff still sounds fresh and new and, amazing to this day, all these years after it's been recorded. Um, you know, that was a track I remember that when I first listened to the album, that was the first one I gravitated towards was Freedom Jazz Dance. So I revisit some of the ideas maybe for some of the melody here, but change up the groove, and really just trying to go for some of the inventive spirit of that iconic group, that Miles '60s Miles group.
Awesome. I want to ask you about one more because I feel like there's more about even a personal influence, and that's track 6, "A Simple Song," right? And I'm reading an article. I forget what magazine this is from, but the late pianist composer Frank Kimbrough was your
Kimberly.
teacher at NYU. Can you talk about that? This song and then his influence on you as a
Ab-
musician.
Absolutely. So Frank, I met Frank Kimbrough when I was, I think, a junior at New York University. He had come in as part of the faculty at that time in my jazz improv class, and so Frank was part of a kind of a group that was making waves and down in the village called the Jazz Composers Collective at the time. And I used to go see them play all the time. It was Ted Nash, who's now part of Winton's band, Ron Horton, uh, uh, Tim Horner, a number of guys. Ben Allison, I think, was the bass player. So these guys who from this project kind of went in to do a lot of things. So I studied with Frank at NYU. I took like some independent lessons with him and stuff and studies just to check him out. The thing that always struck me about Frank is he just thought about music so differently than I did and presented it in a way that I hadn't really considered before. Maybe different than like other teachers of mine had really presented it in the past. And so I was always kind of intrigued by it because it was just such a different way of thinking about music. And so he was always a big influence on me. Just a great pianist and composer in his own right. Although people would know him from the Grammy-winning Maria Schneider Big Band, who I used to see Frank play with them long before they got famous at the now defunct Vigiones down in the Village. Frank's music was always in a kind of like he always skated worlds of in and out as far as jazz. He would always he had a certain time concept sometimes where they'd be sort of out of time, sort of in time. And the track that I have on the record here is kind of an homage to that. Not done the way that he did it. That was his thing, but this was kind of my own little interpretation or spin on it. And this song on the record was inspired by and takes a line from a tune off of one of Frank's records back in like the early 2000s, an album called Lulla Blue By, which you should listen to, and the track is the last track on that album, Eventualities. And it so happens that I mentioned to Frank before he passed, we would get together, actually lived in my neighborhood, and I said, hey Frank, I did this thing with one of your tunes, this tune Eventualities, is it cool? And he didn't even remember the song. He's like, yeah, sure, fine, whatever. But unfortunately, I did not get a chance to play this for him before he passed, but I did at least get his blessing, so that makes me feel good.
Now, of course, you and I, like I said, we last spoke during COVID, and New York City was like one of the last places to open up. I mean, and I know I've been down there a bunch of times this year. How are things for you? What are you into now? What are you able to do musically in your community?
Certainly there's, we were back to playing music. We were back to playing music live. I think, the easy thing for people to understand, particularly if you're not in the business, is A, it's all shut down, and then B, it's over and everything's back to normal. And the truth is kind of somewhere in between. Clubs have closed. Some places that
Like,
were open
like out of
before have
business,
closed.
like
Out of business,
out of business, right? Yeah,
like done.
right.
And places that did survive are surviving, but maybe hanging on maybe a little more than you might realize. Just trying to keep it going. um there are individual opportunities for people that have maybe come back and some that haven't, and I would say for myself, like, it's kind of a weird mix of like some stuff is happening, maybe some stuff isn't. Everyone's just trying to figure it out.
Right.
I think they're trying to figure out how it works. The virus is still out there. I got it back in July. My experiences with it were not good. I was really quite sick. So given all of that, I mean, we're just trying to figure it out best we can. I'm very grateful to be back to being a performing musician again. I am doing that. And I think it's it's a brave new world out there. We're all just trying to figure it out.
Good. Mark, how can people follow you on social media, or how can they, where can they go to learn more about you, your music, find out where you're performing, things of that nature?
So certainly you can go to my website. I'm pretty easy to find online these days. It is markwademusicny.com. But if you just Google Mark Wade, I'm the first thing that comes up in the Google search engine. So
Hey,
you can find me there. I'm also very active on Facebook, if you look me up there, and on Twitter, at Mark Wade Bass, I believe. Again, all those things, I'm pretty visible. Just do your precursory Google search, and you should be cool.
Very good. I encourage you, check out his music. Check out that visual album. I'm telling you, Songs from Isolation is pretty cool. I'm gonna play one on the way out. Of course, I can't play it on YouTube, so we'll let y'all go. Come to wpkn.org if you want to hear this. It's called "I Feel More Like I Do Now." Mark, thank you for making
Hey
it.
man, it's a pleasure to be here. Always great, man. Always great.
All right, and one of these days I'm gonna come see you perform. I haven't had the privilege to do that yet. That's why I'm gonna be following you too, so I know where you are and where I can come see you. Hey man, have a good Sunday, and we'll talk soon.
Likewise, man. Take care.
All right, this is "I Feel More Like I Do Now" by my guest, Mark Wade.